Hello again, and welcome to Progressive Short Takes. I'm your host, Joe Firestone, and in this short take, or shorter take, I want to talk about the so-called executive order. Sometimes it's put as an executive order providing you a payroll tax cut, but actually it's only a payroll tax postponement. Okay, postponement. And you can make it a tax cut uh, um, only if you vote for the Republicans, okay, and Trump. And you may not even be able to make it a tax cut at that point. I mean, Trump wants to make it a tax cut, but who knows what could happen, okay, in terms of the politics of the thing. Let's get to the memorandum, though, and get this on the road, okay? And let me make sure that I'm sharing that screen. I didn't mean to share that one with you, so let's see what we got here. Okay, let me put this up on here. Let me go back to the beginning of this. Okay. By the authority vested in me as president by the constitutional laws of the United States, it is hereby ordered as follows. It's Section 1 dealing, okay, with policy. In Section 1, he says, I'm going to skip the very start. Okay, to that end, the end of actually providing temporary relief to support the working Americans during these challenging times. He says, okay, to that end, today I am directing the Secretary of the Treasury to use his authority to defer certain payroll tax obligations with respect to the American workers most in need. Obviously, that's false. The Americans most in need are the ones who don't have a job. That is, the American workers most in need are those who do not have a job. The ones who still have a job are not the ones most in need. Then he says, this modest targeted action will put money directly in the pockets of American workers and generate additional incentives for work and employment right when the money is needed most. Now, this is a targeted action. It's targeted on workers who have jobs. Okay, so it is targeted in that sense. Just as we said, not really targeted at those who need the money the most. But anyway, that's Trump. But does it put money directly in the pockets, okay, of American workers? Let us see. Secretary of the Treasury is hereby directed to use his authority persistent to 26 by U.S. Code 7508 to defer the withholding deposit and payment of the tax imposed by 26 by U.S. Code 3101A, and so much the tax imposed by 26 by U.S. Code 3201 as is attributable to the rate in effect under 26 by U.S.C. 3101A on wages or compensation is applicable paid during the period of September 1st, 2020 through December 31st, subject to the following conditions. So this is supposed to be a 4-month deferral of the payroll tax obligations. Okay, if you're a person whose payroll tax is coming, let's say, to $350 or so per month, then over the period of time, you might be able to defer $1,400 in taxes. The order says, or actually it's not an order, it's a memorandum. The memorandum says, A, the deferral shall be made available with respect to any employee, the amount of whose wages or compensation as applicable payable during any biweekly pay period generally is less than $4,000, calculated on a pre-tax basis, or the equivalent amount with respect to other pay periods. So there are 26 bi-weekly pay periods per year. If we're talking $4,000 per period, so that means this is targeted, okay, at Americans whose wages or compensation is just a little bit over $100,000 a year, about $104,000 a year. Okay. The amounts deferred pursuant to the implementation of this memorandum shall be deferred without any penalties, interest, additional amount, or addition to the tax. So you won't owe any more if you choose to not have the tax withheld. On the other hand, on January 1st of 2020, you will have incurred a tax debt. You will owe the payment of the tax, okay, at that point. If you're an average person and that tax actually amounted to $1,400, then $1,400 is going to have to come out of your paychecks in January, in addition to the new withholding in January, in order to cover that. Okay. Section 3, authorizing guidance. The Secretary of the Treasury shall issue guidance to implement this memorandum. Tax forgiveness. Secretary of the Treasury shall explore avenues, including legislation, to eliminate the obligation to pay the taxes deferred pursuant to the implementation of this memorandum. Okay, Secretary of Treasury shall explore avenues, but there are no avenues to eliminate the obligation to pay the taxes. Why? Because the taxes are there by law. The FICA contributions are there by law. The Secretary of the Treasury is mandated to collect them eventually. Okay, eventually. Those FICA contributions have to be collected by the Secretary of the Treasury by law. So it's not a matter of exploring avenues, including legislation. It's a matter of exploring the avenue of legislation to eliminate the obligation to pay the taxes. That's the only way it can be done. The only way. Then there are some other provisions. I don't think that I need to read these. I think that's all that has to be read. But now I have some questions that I want to ask. Section 2A says, the tax deferral shall be made available with respect to any employee, the amount of whose wages or compensation is applicable, payable during any biweekly period, etc. What does the deferral shall be made available with respect to any employee mean? Does it mean that the business owners, the employers, must make the deferral available. What does made available mean? Does it mean giving the employees the choice to not have part of their salary withheld for eventual payment to the IRS? Remember, the employers here are the tax collectors acting as agents for the IRS. Do the words "the deferral shall be made available," do they apply to the employers? And if they do, what does that mean? Does it mean that the employers are mandated to defer the withholding? Or does it mean the employers shall have the choice of either withholding or not withholding as seems convenient to them? Because rather than changing their system in large corporations or even in small ones, they have payroll systems. Those payroll systems are computerized. They are set every pay period to withhold a certain amount of payroll contribution that then goes into a fund, and that is then matched by the employer contribution, and then those taxes are paid to the Treasury. They're collected by the businesses and they are paid to the Treasury. So just because the tax is deferred for 4 months doesn't mean that the employers will necessarily feel the need to want to change their internal payroll systems to defer taking the withholding from their employees. They're not going to want to do that. They're going to want to keep the system the same. They're going to want to tell their employees, look, this is best for you and best for us that we collect the tax now. Now, we may not have to pay it until January 1st, but in the first period of the new year, we're going to transmit this to the Treasury Department, which is our obligation to do. But it won't be good for you. It won't be good for you if you insist. If you insist, we will not take that extra money out of your pay for these 4 months. But the first pay period in January, we're going to have to take your whole paycheck for this, maybe more than your whole paycheck for this. Depends on what size your paycheck is. It may be that in January, for 2 periods in January, that you're going to have considerable amounts taken out of your pay in addition to regular withholding to make up for this deferral. So if I'm the employer, what am I going to say to my employees? I'm going to say, look, it's better for you if this is just done on a regular basis. This isn't really a payroll tax cut. It isn't really a payroll tax cut. As of January 1st, these taxes are due. They're just due. It's going to cost us money to change the payroll system. That's going to affect how much profit we have to profit share, how much money we have to raise your salaries, okay, raise your wages. It's better for us and better for you if you don't make us do this. And this is, by the way, if guidance provided by the Secretary of the Treasury says that you, as our tax collecting agents, have to make the choice available to your employees. The Secretary of the Treasury may not give that guidance to the employers. They may not even mention it. They may just tell the employers, you have to make this available to your employees uh, in whatever form you want to make it available, and leaving it up to the employers. And by the way, if the employers decide that they're not going to make it available, they're just going to take the withholding, then what's going to happen? Are the employees going to sue them? Will the Secretary of the Treasury compel employers in some way? Will they enforce the mandate of the president here, expressed in this memorandum, which is not even an executive order and is not legislation? In fact, it's in conflict with legislation. How are business owners going to react to this? And will the Republican Party, whose donors are the biggest of business owners, will the Republican Party and the people in the government who are creatures of the Republican Party, are they going to move to prosecute business owners who don't leave this extra money in the pockets of the workers who want it? In other words, the overall point I'm making here is that, as a practical matter, not many workers are going to find the extra money from withholding in their own pockets for the 4 months between September 1st, 2020 and December 31st of 2020. That's not going to happen for most of the workers Trump is targeting here. It's never going to get into their pockets. It's only going to stay in the employer accounts so that the employers can be sure that when the tax payments fall due on the 1st of January, that they are backed up and that they can make the tax payments. Frankly, that's what I would do if I were still an employer. I was once a small business employer. I had 20 employees. Now, I was pretty flexible. I still had, at the time, I didn't have an automated accounting system that I had to deal with. And I didn't deal with an external service. I had an internal accountant. And we did things the old-fashioned way, by hand. Okay? I could have been flexible and given the employees a real option to not withhold the payments when they were originally due, but to postpone them until the first or second paychecks of January. But I don't even know that I would have given people the option. I mean, maybe in the most hard luck cases, who said, oh, boss, I really, really need you not to take out the withholding this time, I might have done that for their sake, because I was that kind of boss. But the safest thing for them and the safest thing for me is for those 4 months to continue to take that money out of the pocket of the employees, out of their salary checks, so as not to disturb the system and not to expose them to any liability for taxes, and not to expose me as the business owner for any liability for taxes. I think that's what's going to happen this time. I think this order is not going to work, and I think it is just not going to end up in very many people's pockets, that Trump will be entirely frustrated. I think this is another kind of fraud that will be perpetrated on the public. It's PR, it's propaganda, it's not real, it's vaporware. That's it. Thank you. This was a progressive, shorter take. I didn't think I'd get through this in 5 minutes. Bye-bye.